My son handed me cruise tickets. 3 months. I was thrilled, but that same evening, I overheard him telling his wife, "We have 90 days. We'll drain her accounts, sell her house, and disappear." I pretended I heard nothing. But then, good day, dear listeners. It's Louisa again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had always considered myself a lucky woman. At 72, I owned my home outright, a 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet Connecticut suburb that Robert and I had bought 40 years ago. After he passed 5 years earlier, I'd stayed put. The house held memories, yes, but it also held value. Nearly $500,000 worth, according to the recent appraisal I'd gotten just for curiosity's sake. My son Daniel had always been attentive. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, he'd show up with his wife, Melissa, and their twin boys. They'd hug me, tell me they loved me, ask about my week. I thought I knew what a blessed life looked like. That Tuesday evening in March, Daniel came by without calling first. Unusual, but not alarming. He had an envelope in his hand, and that broad smile I'd loved since he was a little boy. "Mom," he said, practically bouncing on his heels, "Melissa and I wanted to do something special for you." I opened the envelope. Inside were cruise tickets, a 3-month voyage through the Mediterranean, departing in 2 weeks. First-class accommodations, port excursions included. I felt my eyes water. 3 months? I whispered. "You've been talking about seeing Italy and Greece since Dad died," Daniel said, wrapping me in a hug. "Now you can. You deserve this, Mom." Melissa stood in the doorway, her smile perfectly pleasant, perfectly practiced. "We already cleared it with the cruise line," she added. "Everything's taken care of. All you have to do is pack." I should have questioned it then. Should have asked why now? Why so suddenly? Why so extravagant? But I was too overwhelmed, too touched by what I believed was genuine love. They stayed for coffee. We talked about the itinerary, the ports of call, what I should pack. Daniel seemed almost giddy. Around 8:30, I excused myself to use the bathroom. That's when I heard it. The bathroom was just off the hallway, and they'd moved into the kitchen, probably assuming I couldn't hear them. But the ventilation duct carried sound better than they knew. Daniel's voice came through clearly, low and urgent. 90 days, Mel. That's all we've got." "I know," Melissa replied. "The timing has to be perfect. We drain the accounts first, then list the house. The market's hot right now. It could sell in 30 days. And she'll be somewhere in the middle of the ocean with no idea." Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. "By the time she gets back, everything will be liquidated. We'll be in Costa Rica. What if she calls? What if she tries to access her accounts?" "She won't. She barely knows how to use online banking, and I'm the joint account holder. She signed that paperwork 2 years ago, remember? For emergencies." My hand gripped the edge of the sink. 2 years ago, after Robert died. Daniel had convinced me that having him on my accounts was just sensible, Mom, in case something happens. I'd trusted him. I'd signed. "What about the house?" Melissa asked. "Power of attorney. She signed that too. I can sell it without her signature." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, at this old woman who'd been stupid enough to trust her own son, to sign away her security because he'd used all the right words. Love, protection, family. How long had they been planning this? I flushed the toilet, ran the water, steadied my breathing. When I walked back into the kitchen, my face was composed, pleasant, trusting. "I can't believe you did this for me," I said, and I even managed to make my voice crack a little. "I'm so lucky to have you both." Daniel hugged me again. I felt his arms around me and wondered how many times he'd embraced me while planning my ruin. They left 20 minutes later, Melissa reminding me to start packing, Daniel promising to help me with any last-minute arrangements. I stood at the door and waved as they drove away. Then I locked the door, walked to the kitchen table, and sat in the dark for a very long time. What do you do when the person you love most in the world is plotting to destroy you? What do you do when your own child has become your enemy? I didn't have answers yet, but I had 90 days to find them. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at Robert's old desk and took inventory of everything I stood to lose. The house, $485,000, according to that appraisal. My savings account, $127,000. Everything Robert's life insurance and our combined retirement had left me. My checking account, another $8,000. Investment accounts, $340,000 in mutual funds and bonds. All told, nearly $1 million. Money that was supposed to see me through my old age that I'd planned to leave to Daniel and his boys. How perfectly I'd set myself up for this. I pulled out the file cabinet where I kept important documents. There it was, the power of attorney form I'd signed 2 years ago. Daniel had brought it over with a notary, some woman from his office who'd smiled and chatted while witnessing my signature. "Just a precaution," he'd said. "God forbid you have a stroke or something. This way I can handle things for you." The joint account paperwork was there too. Same story, same reassurances. I'd been so grateful to have a son who thought ahead, who wanted to protect me. I'd been a fool, but as I sat there in the pre-dawn darkness, something shifted inside me. The initial shock was crystallizing into something colder, sharper. They thought I was a helpless old woman, too trusting and too stupid to see what was happening. They thought they could ship me off on a cruise while they dismantled my entire life. They were wrong. I wasn't some doddering grandmother who'd simply accept this betrayal. I'd worked alongside Robert for 30 years, managing the books for his contracting business. I understood money, contracts, legal documents. I'd raised Daniel, put him through college, helped him buy his first house. And this was how he repaid me? No. This wouldn't stand. By the time the sun rose, I had the beginnings of a plan. First, I needed to understand the exact scope of what they could do. I called my bank when it opened at 9, not Daniel's branch, but the main customer service line. "I have a question about joint accounts," I said to the representative. "If someone is listed as a joint holder, can they withdraw funds without my knowledge?" "Yes, ma'am. Joint account holders have equal access to all funds." "And can they close the account?" "Either party can close a joint account, yes." My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "What if I wanted to remove someone as a joint holder?" "You would both need to sign off on that, or you could close the existing account and open a new one in your name only." I thanked her and hung up. Then I called my investment broker, a man I'd known for 15 years. "Margaret," he said warmly, "what can I do for you? I need to understand something about my accounts. If someone has power of attorney for me, can they access my investments?" There was a pause. "Well, yes. A durable power of attorney would give them authority to manage your financial affairs, including investments. Is everything all right?" "Just making sure I understand my options," I said. "Hypothetically, could I revoke a power of attorney?" "Absolutely. You can revoke it at any time as long as you're mentally competent. You'd need to put it in writing and notify any institutions that have the POA on file." Mentally competent. I almost laughed. I was sharper now than I'd been in years. I spent the rest of that day making calls, asking questions, gathering information. I learned that I could revoke the power of attorney. I could remove Daniel from my bank accounts. I could change my will, but every action would alert him that I knew. And once he knew, what would he do? They had already proven they were willing to commit fraud, to steal from me. If I moved too obviously, too quickly, they might accelerate their plans. Or worse, I needed to be strategic. I needed to appear compliant, grateful, unsuspecting. While I systematically protected everything they wanted to take, that evening, Daniel called to check on me. "How's the packing going, Mom?" "Slowly," I said, forcing a laugh. "I'm not sure what to bring for 3 months. You'll figure it out." "Hey, I was thinking, maybe we should go to the bank together tomorrow, make sure you have enough cash for the trip, get some traveler's checks." Traveler's checks? How thoughtful. How convenient for him to get me to the bank, maybe encourage me to withdraw cash that he could claim I'd spent on the cruise. "That would be wonderful, honey," I said. "What time?" As I hung up, I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. The frightened woman from last night was gone. In her place was someone I barely recognized, someone capable of playing the long game. They wanted to hunt me? Fine. Let them think they were the predators. I met Daniel at the bank the next morning, playing my role perfectly. I wore my confusion like a comfortable cardigan, asking simple questions, nodding uncertainly, letting him guide me through every step. "You should probably withdraw a few thousand," he suggested, "just to have on hand during the cruise." "Oh, I don't think I need that much," I said. "Maybe 500? "Mom, it's 3 months. What if you want to buy things at ports? What if there's an emergency?" His voice had that patient, slightly condescending tone I'd once thought was protective. Now I heard it for what it was, manipulation. "You're right, honey. What would I do without you?" I withdrew 2,000 in cash. He watched the teller count it out with barely concealed satisfaction. What he didn't see was the mental note I made of the teller's name, the time, the transaction number. Evidence, if I ever needed it. After the bank, I told him I had a doctor's appointment, routine checkup before the trip. He offered to drive me, but I insisted I was fine. "You've done so much already," I said. Instead, I drove to the office of Patricia Chen, an attorney whose advertisement I'd found in the local paper. Her practice specialized in elder law and estate planning. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, shaking my hand, "what brings you in today?" I told her everything: the cruise tickets, the overheard conversation, the power of attorney, the joint accounts. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing grimmer. "This is financial exploitation," she said when I finished. "It's elder abuse, and it's criminal." "I don't want to press charges," I said quickly. "He's still my son. But I need to protect myself." Patricia nodded. "First, we revoke that power of attorney immediately. I'll draft the revocation document today. You'll need to sign it, and then we'll send certified copies to your bank, your investment broker, and anyone else who has the original POA on file." "Won't that alert him?" "Yes. But Mrs. Morrison, the alternative is letting him maintain legal access to your assets. Once you're on that ship, he could liquidate everything within days." She was right. I signed the revocation that afternoon. "Next," Patricia continued, "we remove him from your joint accounts. You'll close them and open new ones. I also recommend you change your will if he's currently a beneficiary. He is. He's my only child. You can still leave him something, but I'd suggest placing the bulk of your estate in a trust with specific conditions. That way, if anything happens to you, he can't simply inherit everything immediately." Over the next 3 days, I methodically dismantled Daniel's access to my life. New bank accounts, opened at a different bank entirely. Investment accounts transferred to a new broker. The trust established with Patricia's help. A new will. Leaving the house and half my assets to my grandson's education funds, accessible only when they turned 25, and the remainder to charity. Daniel would get exactly $1, I expected him to notice. I expected the banks to inform him when the joint accounts were closed, when the power of attorney was revoked. But I underestimated how carefully he'd been watching. 4 days before my scheduled departure, Daniel showed up at my house unannounced. It was just after 8 in the evening. I saw his car pull into the driveway and felt my pulse quicken. "Mom," he said when I opened the door. His smile was tight. "Can I come in?" We sat in the living room. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I got a weird letter from First National Bank today," he said. "Something about the joint account being closed. I figured it was a mistake, so I called them." I kept my face neutral. "Oh?" "They said you closed it. Opened a new account at a different bank." He leaned forward. "Mom, what's going on? Are you having memory problems? Did someone convince you to do this?" The concern in his voice was almost convincing. If I hadn't heard that conversation, I might have believed it. "I just thought it was time to simplify things," I said. "At my age, I don't need multiple accounts. But why didn't you tell me? And why remove me from the account? Did I?" I widened my eyes slightly. "Oh, Daniel, I must have filled out the forms wrong. You know how confused I get with all that paperwork." He studied me, and I could see him trying to decide if I was genuinely confused or if I knew. This was the crucial moment. If he believed I was becoming senile, he might move faster. If he suspected I knew about his plans, he might become dangerous. "Maybe we should cancel the cruise," he said finally. "If you're having trouble with simple banking, I don't think you should be traveling alone for 3 months." There it was. The threat, wrapped in false concern. "Oh no," I said, reaching over to pat his hand. "I'm so looking forward to it. And you went to all that trouble. I'll be fine, sweetheart. I promise." I saw the calculation in his eyes. He didn't believe me, but he couldn't prove anything. Not yet. After he left, I found the envelope on my porch. No note, just printouts. Screenshots of websites about dementia, articles about seniors who'd been scammed, information about conservatorships and mental competency hearings. He was building a narrative. If I fought him, he'd claim I was incompetent. He'd use my own protective actions as proof that I needed to be declared incapable of managing my affairs. I sat on my couch holding those papers and realized the war had truly begun. The next morning, I returned to Patricia Chen's office with the envelope Daniel had left. "He's going to try to have me declared incompetent," I told her, spreading the printouts across her desk. Patricia examined them carefully. "This is a common tactic in elder financial abuse cases. He's creating a paper trail to support a conservatorship petition." "Can he do that?" "He can petition the court, yes. But he'd need medical evidence. Doctors willing to testify that you lack capacity to manage your affairs. Have you had any cognitive testing recently?" "No." "Then let's get ahead of this. I'm referring you to Dr. Howard Berkowitz. He's a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in competency evaluations. We'll get you tested now while you're clearly of sound mind. That report will be your shield if Daniel tries anything." I met with Dr. Berkowitz that same afternoon. For 3 hours, he put me through a battery of tests, memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, questions about current events, and basic living skills. At the end, he smiled. "Mrs. Morrison, your cognitive function is excellent. You score in the 95th percentile for your age group. I'll have my full report to Ms. Chen by tomorrow." Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. That evening, both Daniel and Melissa arrived at my house. I saw them through the window, walking up together, their expressions serious. I considered not answering, but that would only confirm their suspicions. "We need to talk," Daniel said as soon as I opened the door. They didn't wait for an invitation. Melissa walked straight to the living room and sat down, her arms crossed. Daniel closed the door behind him with more force than necessary. "What happened to the power of attorney, Mom?" he asked. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play games. My investment broker called me today. Said you'd revoked the POA and moved all your accounts. The bank said the same thing yesterday." His voice was rising. "What the hell is going on?" "Daniel, please don't yell." "I'm not yelling." He was definitely yelling. "I'm trying to understand why my own mother is cutting me out of her financial life after everything I've done for you." Melissa stood up. "We know what this is about," she said, her voice cold. "Someone's gotten to you. One of those scam artists who target seniors. They convince you your family is stealing from you, and then they steal everything themselves." It was almost impressive, the way she'd flipped it. "No one's gotten to me," I said quietly. "Then why?" Daniel demanded. "Why did you do this? And don't give me that simplified banking bullshit." This was it. The moment of truth. I could continue pretending, continue playing the confused old woman, or I could let them know I knew. I met my son's eyes. "I heard you," I said. "That night you gave me the cruise tickets. I heard what you said to Melissa in the kitchen." The room went absolutely silent. Daniel's face drained of color. Melissa's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Mom?" Daniel started. 90 days, I said. "That's what you said. 90 days to drain my accounts and sell my house while I'm in the middle of the ocean." I kept my voice steady, controlled. "Did you really think I'd just let you rob me blind?" "You're confused," Melissa said quickly. "Daniel, she's clearly not well." "I'm not confused," my voice cracked. "I know exactly what you were planning. I signed those papers because I trusted you, Daniel, because you're my son, and you were going to use them to destroy me." Daniel's shock was morphing into something uglier. "You have no idea what you're talking about. We were trying to help you." "By stealing everything I have? You're an old woman living alone in a house you can't maintain," he shouted. "You need care. You need supervision. We were going to use that money to put you somewhere safe." "A nursing home?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that the story you're telling yourself? You were going to steal $1 million and flee to Costa Rica, but it was for my own good?" Melissa stood abruptly. "We don't have to listen to this. She's clearly paranoid, probably early-stage dementia. Daniel, call Dr. Patterson tomorrow. We need to get her evaluated." "I've already been evaluated," I said. "This afternoon. Dr. Howard Berkowitz, geriatric psychiatrist. Full cognitive assessment. I'm completely competent, and I have the medical documentation to prove it." I pulled out a copy of Dr. Berkowitz's preliminary report and handed it to Daniel. He read it, his face growing darker. "You planned this," he said slowly. "You've been planning this whole thing. I protected myself. There's a difference." He threw the report on the coffee table. "Fine. You want to play it this way? The cruise is canceled. You're not going anywhere." "Those tickets are non-refundable," I said. "You told me so yourself." "I don't give a damn about the tickets." He was in my face now, close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. "You're not leaving, because if you do, I swear to God, Mom, you won't have a house to come back to." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm promising you." His voice dropped to something cold and frightening. "You can play these legal games all you want, but I'm still your son. I'm still your only family. And when you're dying alone in this house with no one to take care of you, you'll remember this moment." They left. I locked the door behind them and stood there, shaking. I'd won this round. My money was protected, my competency documented. But I'd lost something too. Whatever remained of my relationship with my son was gone now, burned away by his rage and my refusal to be his victim. For 3 days, I barely left my bedroom. I had Patricia check on me daily, but otherwise, I needed the silence. I needed to grieve for the son I'd thought I had, for the family I'd believed was mine. But grief, I learned, could sharpen into something useful. On the 4th day, the flowers arrived. 24 white roses, my favorite. The card read, "Mom, I'm sorry, we need to talk. Love, Daniel." An hour later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, I answered. "Mom." Daniel's voice was soft, broken. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me the other night. The stress at work, everything, I just lost it. But threatening you? That was unforgivable. Please, can we talk?" I said nothing. "I know I hurt you," he continued, "and you have every right to protect yourself. I'm not asking you to change anything you've done. I just want my mother back. I miss you. The boys miss you." The boys. He was using my grandsons now. "They keep asking when they can see Grandma," he said. "They don't understand why you're not coming to Sunday dinner anymore." "I didn't realize Sunday dinner was still happening," I said carefully. "Of course it is. You're always welcome, Mom. Your family. That hasn't changed." Everything in his tone said reconciliation, said love, said family. And if I hadn't heard that conversation in the kitchen, if I didn't know what he'd planned, I might have believed it. "I'll think about it," I said. "That's all I ask." "And Mom? About the cruise. If you still want to go, go. I was just worried about you, but if you've been evaluated and you're healthy, then you should enjoy yourself. You deserve it." After I hung up, I sat very still. This was the new strategy. Love bombing, guilt tripping, using the grandchildren as leverage. Make me doubt myself. Make me feel like the villain for protecting my own assets. It was insidious because part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me wanted to think that my son was genuinely sorry, that we could rebuild what had been broken. But I'd learned to trust the evidence over the emotion. The next day, Melissa called. "Margaret," she said. She never called me Mom, and I'd never asked her to. "I owe you an apology. I was defensive the other night, and I said things I shouldn't have. The truth is, Daniel and I have been under enormous financial pressure. We made some bad investments, and we're facing foreclosure on our house." Interesting. This was new information. "I didn't know," I said. "We didn't want to burden you." But Daniel thought. He thought maybe the cruise could wait, and you could help us instead. I told him that was wrong, that we couldn't ask you for money. But he was desperate. Her voice caught. "He loves you so much, Margaret. He's just been under so much stress." So this was the narrative. They weren't thieves. They were desperate people who'd considered asking for help, but had decided against it. And now I was the cruel mother who wouldn't help her struggling son. "How much do you need?" I asked. There was a pause. "We couldn't." "How much, Melissa?" 70,000 would save the house. Exactly the amount Daniel could have taken from my checking and savings accounts if I hadn't closed them. They'd had a specific number in mind all along. "I'll think about it," I said. That evening, I called my neighbor, Ruth Shapiro. Ruth was 81, a retired school principal, and the sharpest person I knew. We'd been friends for 20 years, but I'd been too ashamed to tell her what was happening. Now, I told her everything. Ruth listened, asked clarifying questions. And when I finished, she said, "You did exactly the right thing. And now they're trying to manipulate you back into compliance. But what if they really are in financial trouble? What if I'm being cruel? Margaret, listen to me. If your son and his wife were in genuine financial difficulty, they would have asked you for help directly. They wouldn't have tried to steal from you. This sob story about foreclosure? It's bait. They're testing you to see if you'll give them money voluntarily. You think they're lying about the foreclosure? I think you should verify it before you give them a dime. But more importantly, I think you need to remember what you heard. They weren't planning to ask for $70,000. They were planning to take everything. Ruth was right. I knew she was right. Come to dinner tomorrow, she said. I'm having some friends over. Betty from the library board, Joan from church, Helen from my book club. They're all women who've dealt with family financial issues. You're not alone in this, Margaret. That dinner changed everything. I sat with 4 women I'd known casually for years and learned that Betty's nephew had forged her signature on a home equity loan, that Joan's daughter had stolen her identity to open credit cards, that Helen's son had convinced her to invest in his business, which turned out to be a gambling debt. What did you do? I asked them. I pressed charges, Betty said. He served 6 months. I froze my credit and cut her off completely, Joan said. Haven't spoken to her in 3 years. I lost $80,000 and gained a very expensive lesson, Helen said. I didn't pursue legal action, but I changed my will. He doesn't know it yet, but he's getting nothing. These women understood. They didn't judge me for my son's betrayal because they'd lived it themselves. The hardest part, Ruth said, is accepting that the child you raised isn't the adult standing in front of you. You're mourning someone who doesn't exist anymore, and that's okay. Mourn them. But don't let that grief make you a victim. I drove home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Certainty. Cold, clear certainty. Daniel and Melissa could try every manipulation in the book. They could send flowers, make apologies, invoke my grandsons, claim financial hardship. None of it would work because I finally understood. This wasn't about money. It was about power. About whether I would allow myself to be diminished, controlled, exploited, just to maintain the illusion of family. And I wouldn't. Sunday morning, 10:30. I was having coffee when I heard the car doors slam in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Daniel, Melissa, and my twin grandsons, Tyler and Connor, climbing out. The boys were carrying what looked like poster boards. I opened the door before they could knock. Grandma! Tyler rushed forward and hugged me. We made you something! Both boys held up hand-drawn posters. We miss you, Grandma, was written in crayon across one. Please come back on the other. They'd drawn stick figures, a grandmother figure surrounded by hearts. My throat tightened. They'd used my grandsons, actually brought them here as props in their manipulation. These are beautiful, I said, kneeling down to their level. You boys are such good artists. Dad said you were mad at us, Connor said, his 8-year-old face serious. I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. Not at all. Then why don't you come to dinner anymore? Tyler asked. Behind them, Daniel and Melissa stood on my porch, perfectly positioned as the concerned, loving family I was supposedly rejecting. Can we come in, Mom? Daniel asked. Please? What could I say with the boys standing there? I stepped aside. They settled in my living room, the boys on the floor with their coloring books, Melissa on the couch looking appropriately conciliatory, Daniel in Robert's old chair, like a Norman Rockwell painting of family togetherness. We wanted to do this right, Daniel began, to really talk without anger or accusations, because, Mom, this family is falling apart and it's killing me. Killing all of us, Melissa added softly. I know I said terrible things the other night, Daniel continued. I was hurt and confused, and I lashed out. But I've had time to think and I understand now. You felt betrayed. You thought we were trying to take advantage of you. Weren't you? I asked quietly. No. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. What you heard, what you think you heard, you took it completely out of context. We were talking about helping you downsize, about finding you a nice condo where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance. The house is too much for you, Mom. You know it is. I never said, you don't have to say it. I see how you struggle with the yard work, the repairs. Last month you mentioned the furnace making noise. Do you even remember that? I did remember. I'd mentioned it in passing. We were talking about selling the house and using that money to buy you something smaller, something manageable, Melissa said. And yes, we thought we could handle it while you were on the cruise, as a surprise. We were trying to help. It was a good story, almost plausible, if the timeline made any sense. And the bank accounts? I asked. You were going to drain them to help me? Consolidate them, Daniel said. Into a trust account for your benefit. Mom, you have money scattered across 4 different banks, 3 investment firms. It's inefficient. We were going to streamline everything. Without asking me first? We wanted it to be a gift. Melissa's voice rose slightly before she caught herself. A complete financial reorganization, all done while you were enjoying your trip. So you could come home to everything simplified and managed. Tyler looked up from his coloring. Are you guys fighting? No, buddy, Daniel said quickly. We're just talking. Adults sometimes talk about complicated things. He turned back to me. But since you've taken all these steps, hired a lawyer, moved your money, gotten that psychiatric evaluation, we're wondering if maybe there's something else going on. Early-stage paranoia is actually a symptom of several age-related conditions, and there it was. The velvet-gloved threat. Dr. Berkowitz said I'm completely healthy, I said. One doctor's opinion, Melissa murmured. We'd just feel better if you got a second evaluation. Maybe someone who specializes in what? In telling you what you want to hear? Mom, please. Daniel's voice hardened slightly. We're trying to help you. We love you. But if you're going to be paranoid and accusatory, if you're going to shut us out completely, then we have to consider what's best for the boys. What does that mean? It means Tyler and Connor don't need to be exposed to this kind of hostility, Melissa said. If you're going to treat their father like a criminal. I heard what I heard. You heard a conversation you didn't understand. Daniel stood up abruptly. And instead of asking us about it, instead of trusting your own son, you went behind our backs and poisoned everything. I protected myself. From what? From people who love you. From the only family you have. He was pacing now, his voice rising. Do you know what you've done? You've made it impossible for us to help you. You've tied everything up with lawyers and new accounts and trusts. So when you fall and break your hip, when you have a stroke, when you can't remember your own name, what then? Who's going to take care of you? Daniel, calm down, Melissa said. But she was watching me, gauging my reaction. I won't calm down. She's going to end up alone, deteriorating in this house, and it'll be her own fault. He turned to me, and his eyes were cold. You think you've won something here? You think you're so smart, outsmarting your own son? Let me tell you what you've won, Mom. You've won isolation. You've won dying alone. Because we're done. The boys and I are done trying to help someone who doesn't want to be helped. He grabbed Tyler's hand. Come on, boys. Say goodbye to Grandma. But we just got here, Connor protested. Now, Daniel said. Melissa gathered their coloring books, moving slowly, deliberately. She looked at me with something like pity. This is such a shame, Margaret. I hope someday you'll realize we were only trying to love you. They left. The boys waved sadly from the car as they pulled away. I stood in my doorway, watching them disappear, and felt my hands shaking. The threat had been clear. Submit, or lose your grandchildren. Give us control or die alone. Part of me was terrified. They were right about one thing. I was alone. Daniel and those boys were my only family. But I walked back into my house, locked the door, and looked around at my living room, my home, my life, everything I'd worked for, everything Robert and I had built. And I realized I'd rather be alone and free than surrounded by people who wanted to rob me. The fear transformed, crystallized, became something diamond hard. They'd made their final offer. I'd made my choice. Now it was time to end this. I spent the next day preparing, every document organized, every piece of evidence cataloged. Patricia Chen had advised against this meeting, but I insisted. I needed to see it through to the end. I sent Daniel a text. "You're right. We need to talk properly. Come to dinner Thursday, 6 p.m. Just you and Melissa. We need adult conversation without the boys." He responded within minutes. "Thank you, Mom. We'll be there." On Thursday afternoon, I set the dining room table. 3 places. My good china. I made pot roast, Daniel's favorite. The house smelled like family dinner, like old times. I also called Patricia and asked her to be available by phone. Then I called Ruth and asked her to come over at 6:15, not to join us, but to be present in case things went wrong. At exactly 6 o'clock, Daniel and Melissa arrived. They carried a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers. Their smiles were warm, but cautious. "Mom," Daniel said, hugging me, "thank you for this." We made small talk through dinner. The pot roast, the weather, the boys' soccer season. It was almost normal. Almost like we were a real family having a real conversation. When we finished eating, I cleared the plates and brought out coffee. Then I sat down and placed a manila folder on the table between us. "What's that?" Melissa asked. "Evidence," I said calmly. Daniel's expression flickered. "Evidence of what?" I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, property records, and printouts of text messages. I had Patricia, my attorney, do some research after you mentioned the foreclosure. Turns out there's no foreclosure on your house. Your mortgage is current. You're not in financial difficulty at all. Melissa's face paled. "How did you—" "Public records," I said. "But that made me curious. If you weren't desperate for money, why claim you were?" So I kept digging. I pulled out another document. This is a purchase agreement for a property in Costa Rica. A beachfront villa, to be exact. Dated 3 months ago. The buyers are listed as Daniel Morrison and Melissa Morrison. Purchase price, $450,000. Financed through— I looked at the paperwork. An offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Daniel said nothing. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "That's interesting, because 3 months ago, you still had access to my accounts," I continued. "And according to my bank, there was an attempted wire transfer from my investment account to that same Cayman account. $75,000. It was flagged as suspicious and blocked." "You can't prove—" Melissa started. "Actually, I can." I pulled out more papers. "The wire transfer request has your electronic signature on it, Daniel, not mine. The bank's fraud department has confirmed it. They're currently investigating it as attempted identity theft." The silence that followed was absolute. "You were going to steal from me," I said, my voice steady. "Not because you were desperate, because you wanted a villa in Costa Rica. You wanted to retire early, live on the beach, and you thought my money would fund it." "That's not—" Daniel stood up. "That transfer was a mistake. An accounting error with my business." "Sit down," I said quietly. Something in my voice made him obey. "Here's what I know," I said. "You've been planning this for months, maybe years. You got me to sign those papers, got yourself access to my accounts. You bought cruise tickets, non-refundable, expensive cruise tickets, because you needed me gone for 3 months, long enough to liquidate everything and disappear before I could stop you." "That's insane," Melissa said, but her voice was shaking. "Is it? Because I also found this." I pulled out printed emails. Correspondence between Daniel and a real estate agent about listing my house. You were already in contact with an agent. Had my house appraised. Discussed pricing strategy. All while pretending you were just worried about me living alone. Daniel's face had gone from red to white. You had no right to access my emails. Your business email, I corrected, which you accessed from my computer 3 months ago and forgot to log out of. Everything was still there. Melissa stood abruptly. We don't have to listen to this. Daniel, let's go. Sit down, Melissa, I said, because we haven't gotten to the best part. I pulled out the final document, a recording device which I placed on the table. This is the recording from that night. The night you gave me the cruise tickets. The conversation I overheard in my kitchen. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room, tinny but clear. 90 days, Mel. That's all we've got. Drain the accounts first, then list the house. She'll be somewhere in the middle of the ocean with no idea. I watched the color drain from both their faces as they listened to their own words condemning them. When it ended, I turned off the device. So here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave my house and never contact me again. You're going to abandon whatever plans you had for that Costa Rican villa. And you're going to pray that I don't take this recording and these documents to the police. You wouldn't, Daniel whispered. Wouldn't I? I met his eyes. You were willing to rob your own mother, to leave me destitute, to literally steal my home while I was trapped on a cruise ship. And you think I won't press charges? I'm your son. You were my son, I said. The son I raised died when he decided I was worth more to him as a victim than as a mother. Melissa grabbed her purse. This is extortion. We could sue you. With what evidence? I asked calmly. I have recordings. I have attempted wire fraud. I have emails about selling my house without my knowledge. What do you have, Melissa? Hurt feelings? Daniel's hands were shaking. Mom, please, think about what you're doing. Think about Tyler and Connor. They love you. Are you really going to destroy their family over a misunderstanding? A misunderstanding? I laughed, a harsh sound I barely recognized. You tried to rob me of nearly $1 million. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a felony. We'll fight this, he said, standing. We'll tell everyone you're incompetent, that you're paranoid. I have a psychiatric evaluation saying otherwise. What do you have? I stood too, facing him. Go ahead, Daniel. Tell people. Tell them your elderly mother accused you of trying to steal from her. Let's see how that plays. They left. No goodbyes, no final words. Just the sound of the door slamming and their car speeding away. Ruth arrived 15 minutes later, let in by the spare key I'd given her. She found me sitting at the dining room table staring at the recorder. It's done, I said. She put her hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. I nodded, but right didn't feel triumphant. It just felt necessary. The next morning, I took all my evidence to the police. Detective Maria Santos listened to everything. The recording, the wire transfer attempt, the emails about selling my house. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. Mrs. Morrison, what you've described is textbook elder financial abuse. It's a felony in Connecticut. Are you sure you want to proceed with this? He's my son, I said. But yes, I'm sure. The investigation moved quickly. Daniel's attempt to wire transfer money from my account was prosecuted as identity theft and attempted fraud. The emails showed clear intent to illegally sell my property using the power of attorney I'd since revoked. Most damning was the recording, evidence of premeditated conspiracy to commit financial exploitation. Daniel hired a lawyer, of course, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that I was a confused old woman misinterpreting innocent conversations. But the evidence was overwhelming. His attorney contacted Patricia within a week, asking for a deal. Drop the charges and Daniel would sign away any claim to my estate, any future contact. A clean break. Patricia called me with the offer. What do you want to do, Margaret? I thought about Tyler and Connor, about never seeing them grow up, about Daniel facing potential prison time. Then I thought about that recording, about how easily he'd laughed about leaving me destitute in the middle of the ocean. No deal, I said. Let it go to trial. But it never made it that far. Faced with the evidence, Daniel pled guilty to attempted wire fraud and financial exploitation of an elderly person. The sentence: 3 years probation, a $10,000 fine, and 500 hours of community service. He would also be permanently prohibited from serving as anyone's power of attorney or having access to any elderly person's financial accounts. Melissa wasn't charged. Prosecutors couldn't prove she'd participated directly in the wire transfer, but the damage was done. Once word spread in their community about what Daniel had tried to do, the social consequences were swift. His business partners distanced themselves. Friends stopped calling. The boys' school parents whispered in parking lots. The Costa Rican villa sale fell through when the offshore account was frozen as part of the investigation. Whatever money they'd squirreled away was seized as proceeds of attempted fraud. I attended one of Daniel's community service sessions. He was cleaning bedpans at the senior center, court-ordered elder care work. When he saw me standing in the doorway, his face went pale. "Hello, Daniel," I said. He didn't respond, just turned back to his work, his shoulders hunched in shame. I didn't stay. I just needed to see it, needed to see that there were consequences, that justice could actually be served. Patricia helped me finalize my new estate plan. The house would go to a charitable trust that supported elder abuse prevention programs. My financial assets were split. Half to scholarships for Tyler and Connor, accessible when they turned 25, and only if they maintained good grades and character references. The other half to various charities, women's shelters, legal aid for seniors, organizations fighting financial exploitation. Daniel received exactly what I'd originally planned: $1. The official reading of my will wouldn't happen until I was gone. But I had Patricia send Daniel a copy now. I wanted him to know, wanted him to understand that his inheritance, everything he'd schemed and planned for, was gone. His response came via his attorney. A letter claiming I was vindictive, that I was punishing him and his children for a misunderstanding, that someday I'd regret destroying our family. I burned the letter and didn't respond. The cruise tickets were indeed non-refundable, but I contacted the cruise line and explained the situation. They were surprisingly understanding. Apparently, elder financial abuse is common enough that they had policies for it. They let me transfer the tickets to Ruth. "I can't accept this," she said when I told her. "You can and you will," I said. "I need you to go. I need someone to actually enjoy what was supposed to be my prison sentence." Ruth sent me postcards from every port. Pictures of Santorini, Rome, Athens, Barcelona. Each one signed, "Wish you were here, but glad you're not their victim. Love, Ruth." 3 months after the sentencing, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, my grandsons Tyler and Connor, now 9 years old, smiling at a soccer game. No note, no explanation, just the photo. I put it in a frame on my mantle. Because, despite everything, they were still my grandsons, and the trust fund I'd set up for their education would ensure that what their father had tried to do wouldn't define their futures. I'd won, completely, utterly, without compromise. But victory tasted like loss. 6 months after the trial, I sold my house and bought a 2-bedroom condo in a 55-plus community. It had security, organized activities, and most importantly, no painful memories. Ruth became my closest friend. We took classes together: watercolor painting, Italian cooking, chair yoga. We traveled to Vermont in fall, Charleston in spring. Nothing extravagant, but everything meaningful. I volunteered at the senior center 3 days a week, teaching elderly people to recognize financial exploitation. My own son tried to rob me, I'd tell them. Don't make my mistake. Protect yourselves. The center named a conference room after me, the Margaret Morrison Financial Literacy Center. The plaque read, "Family is not an excuse for exploitation." I joined a book club, made genuine friends, attended concerts and museums. I lived. And Daniel? His business partnership dissolved when partners discovered his criminal record. He lost every major client within a month. Background checks killed his consulting career. Fraud convictions are public record, permanently searchable. Melissa left him 9 months after the trial, taking the boys to her parents' house in Rhode Island. She told everyone she couldn't stay married to someone who'd rob his own mother. Daniel moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, working hourly at a hardware store. Child support and alimony consumed most of his paycheck. The boys were thriving despite everything. Their education trust fund, $200,000 each at age 25, would protect them from their father's mistakes. When Daniel petitioned to seal his record, I wrote a victim impact statement. He has shown no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. Justice demands he face full consequences. The petition was denied. I slept soundly that night in my safe condo, surrounded by friends who chose me and protected me. I'd won more than a legal battle. I'd won my life back. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that trust is more valuable than blood, and self-respect is more important than family ties. My son taught me the hardest lesson of my life, that love without boundaries is an invitation to exploitation, that forgiveness without consequences is permission to repeat the harm. I don't regret my choices. I protected myself when no one else would. I chose survival over sentiment, and I lived to tell the story. To anyone listening who sees themselves in my story, protect yourself. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember, you are worth defending, even against the people you love most. What would you have done in my place? Would you have looked the other way for the sake of family? Or would you have fought? Leave your thoughts below. Share this story if it resonated. And subscribe for more real-life lessons about survival, strength, and choosing yourself. Thank you for listening to my story.